Hi everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoy our shows, please like our videos and subscribe to our channel. And you can support us by clicking onto our website, ageoftruth.tv.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Age of Truth TV. I'm Lucas Alexander in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's the 18th of July 2019 and our guest today is an Australian activist who is the initiator behind Stop 5G Global, who organized the 5G Health Symposium in Australia. Paul SEILS. Thank you very much, Paul, for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Lucas. Thank you.
Why is 5G such an important topic at the moment? We are now in July 2019. What is actually going on?
Yeah, well, it's certainly a hot topic at the moment, and rightfully so. It should be for many reasons. And my background has really been around privacy and surveillance. My primary concern and primary driver has really been around the agenda for 5G and that what it makes available as far as an invasion of privacy is concerned. I basically believe that privacy should be a fundamental human right. And as we've seen from information that other people have provided previously, we're sort of catching this wave in at the moment, but we're really standing on the shoulders of giants and other people that have contributed and alerted us to privacy issues previously, people like Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, etc. But what the 5G or fifth generation technology makes available in relation to privacy and the integration with the Internet of Things is the coordination between all the smart devices, so the smart meters, the smartphones, the smart televisions. All that technology becomes the Internet of Things, and then ultimately that becomes a huge surveillance grid which tracks our every movement and our every activity, and which is fair enough for the convenience if that's what you're consenting to. But a lot of people are completely unaware, and Edward Snowden made comments that the current generation of teenagers and millennials will have no concept of privacy, what it means to have privacy whatsoever in the future. So from my point of view, the surveillance, the mass surveillance, let's fundamentally say that it's military grade, active denial, mass surveillance technology. Fundamentally, that's my primary driver, as I said, around mass surveillance. And then you have the people that are dealing with EHS or dealing with electromagnetic radiation, that are becoming sensitive to that, and that's a real concern, but ultimately that's just a byproduct of the technology. That's the collateral damage of the technology, and I didn't even realize it was a thing until I've met people that really suffer, and some people are more sensitive and susceptible to it than others, but some people are really suffering about it. I think that we'll, as humanity's concerned, we'll look back on this point in time and wonder how we've allowed this to happen so far. And I also have my concerns and considerations that we'll look back on diseases like chronic fatigue and MS, and even in some cases, even things like Asperger's, where doctors have been sort of treating that for the symptoms and not the root cause. And I think there's a lot of people suffering conditions from overexposure of the radiation, and these diseases are turning up as a byproduct of that technology, that pollution. that have been completely unaware of. I know there's other scientists that have been talking about it for years.
But many scientists around the world, at least those who are allowed to speak in the mainstream media, they're claiming that there are no danger. It's not dangerous, and there are no health effects of rolling out 5G. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a pretty broad, sweeping remark. I wouldn't. One of the lawyers we've been working with, Ray Broomhall, he had taken reportedly taken a microwave into a courtroom and that had the door removed and asked permission to sort of turn it on. It's like some people don't seem to have an issue with eating microwave food either. Not that I ever choose to, but fundamentally it just doesn't sort of make sense from that point of view. But there's many people that are claiming that it doesn't, that it's non-ionizing radiation, that it doesn't have any impact. But people have said that historically as well about other things, including glyphosate and Roundup, the carcinogenic effects of tobacco, and also about the asbestos industry in the building industry that have fought it and denied any liability or any ill effects right to the end.
So do you think that those scientists could possibly be paid by, some kind of elite force working behind the scenes?
I try to drill down specifics, and wherever possible, just stay with the facts, even though there's a lot of conspiratorial issues on the fringes. But as I opened the address at the symposium that we had, I just sort of said to them, like, who we're going to listen to? We're going to listen to these people that are creating broad aspersions, like we have national bodies like a PANZA in Australia, and that are claiming that there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, the levels of disease and tumours and infertility is rising at a rapid rate at the moment. And who we're going to listen to? We're going to listen to the telecommunication companies that it's probably the largest, one of the largest industries in the world. And we've been talking about the fact that data is the new oil. So who are we going to listen to? These telecommunications companies that are out to invest and make trillions of dollars, or the scientists and doctors and technicians that are raising the alarms that have got legitimate concerns around the health and well-being and what the potential impacts are on people. In relation to the rollout for 5G, for example, they're talking about placing the towers and the antennas every 100 to 300 meters in some of the areas. And in the States, they're even talking about private citizens putting the towers and antennas on being paid to place it on their personal property. So we've spent a lot of time and with a lot of technicians recently taking meter readings and that sort of thing, and it's really quite concerning. We don't know. I think the thing is what we're really concerned about are the fact is that they can't actually produce any evidence to prove that the technology is safe, and they haven't been able to prove what it's going to be like to be subjected to this for a long period of time. And my main concern, particularly in the last 8 years as being an activist, is the fact that once people start having their ability, they don't have any, they can't opt out of being subjected to 5G radiation. It's different if you're talking about issues like vaccination, or you're talking about other types of technologies, etc. But that people won't have a choice to be able to opt out of that technology. They'll constantly be exposed to it, and that's a major concern.
In your opinion, what are the dangers and health effects of electromagnetic radiation and frequencies?
Well, it ranges in the spectrum. And again, I don't pretend to be a scientist. I'm fortunate enough to know a lot of great people that I've consulted with and that have provided information to us. So it can be anything that can mimic agitation, brain fog, chronic fatigue, right through to sleep, lack of sleep deprivation, and and also around interrupting people's reproductive cycles and their fertility levels. So you might have people that are still able to reproduce this, but from what the scientists are explaining to us, that it has the ability to fundamentally interrupt our DNA. So we'll end up having children that will that won't be fertile. So that's the real concern. And then there's the rises in the infertility rates due to the electromagnetic pollution and radiation as well. There's a myriad things about it, but I think the main thing is that people are fundamentally having their choices removed. So if you don't want to partake in cigarette smoking, or you don't want to partake in eating non-organic food, then you have the ability to do that. But once 5G technology kicks in and it rolls out to the extent that they're planning to or wanting it to, the ability to be able to opt out by choice gets removed.
Why did most of the politicians all over the world vote yes to the implementation of 5G all over the world, actually, in their respective countries?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, but I think fundamentally that they're acting on the information that they have and that they've been given. The same as politicians decided to take us to war under the weapons of mass destruction argument based on the data that they were provided at the time. That doesn't allow any room for intuition, or particularly, having to do it in haste and rolling it out, and it's being presented as, the US technology versus Chinese technology, and even Putin came out and said whoever gets to dominate the space as far as the technology and artificial intelligence is concerned, it's the race for data. So, but at what cost?
So do you think there's an agenda behind the race of data?
Well, it's whoever has the most data wins. In relation to, you look at the corporatocracy that's rolling out at the moment. Ultimately, it makes business systems to be as efficient as possible, so that people don't have to send people to read meters. You've got smart meters. You've got the technology, all the surveillance there. It's being monitored. People's buying patterns, people's spending patterns. To be able to harness that technology and be able to use that to drive commerce, that's fundamentally the agenda. And then there's the concerns around the surveillance side of things as well. But I can't speak into it fully, but
please try and get into it as much as you can. It would be very interesting for people to hear your thoughts on what the real agenda is behind the rollout of 5G.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, it's a full-blown surveillance system. That's what it is. It's a surveillance system that it makes the monitoring of the full-blown monitoring of people possible in relation to their travel patterns, their buying patterns, their spending patterns, and then all you need to do, it's full lockdown of humanity, and it's full-blown scale. That's what it becomes, and then you integrate that with some sort of centralized blockchain system, and then that enables full centralization of currency, and then taxation of people in real time, and then the full surveillance, and that integrates with the social credit system. So you have the social credit and profiling system that's being trialled in China at the moment. That's also being trialled in Darwin. That's in Australia as a trial as well. So what happens is that people get on a credit system, and you don't pay your fines in time. You don't put your tax returns in time. People are encouraged to sort of, put their neighbours in and spy on their neighbours if they see anything untowards. All that, full-blown Orwellian scenario. It's like, it's 1984 meets the Animal Farm, sort of fully blown on steroids. So it's like, and then a lot of those services that people are working in now, like law enforcement, etc., a lot of that sort of gets obsolete, because you're under full surveillance. If you're seen jaywalking, if you're seen doing anything untoward, you automatically get fined. You don't pay your fine, you lose your points. What happens is there's like 21 million Chinese now that are in the world that are that are wiped from the social credit system, and they're unable to travel by train or plane or air, etc. So that's the scenario for the full blown. That's the full blown surveillance system. That's the end game.
Can the rollout of 5G and the so-called 5G and the smart grid around Earth that they're talking about, could that be used for mind control?
Yeah, well, if you get to watch some of the documentaries like Beings of Frequency, you get to know, and also other work by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who talks about the biology of belief and the human body being a battery and human antennas and that sort of thing. And then you look at what the potential impacts of the integration of other technologies that have been carried out previously, including vaccination and water fluoridation with heavy metal toxicities, and then the integration of the chemtrails with the system that people like Sasha Stone from 5G Apocalypse have documented. So that has the ability to be able to make the air more denser, and then has that technology be able to work more effectively. The amount of chemtrails and geoengineering that's get carried out in the world at the moment is phenomenal. If you get to track it, people send us photos and sending us information all the time about what's been happening in all parts of the US and Europe and all that side of things as well. But the integration with the social credit system, which really locks things down, and just its complete domination by and integration with artificial intelligence and facial recognition, and really makes, it's really quite surreal to be having these conversations about it, that's happening so fast, and the rollout of 5G technology is getting rolled out so quickly globally, like right across the world simultaneously. And we, from our research that we've done and for what people have provided, that it's all been planned out over about the last 10 years.
Like a control grid, as you said, for the control system, in order to connect human consciousness and the human brain to AI, artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts on that?
I've had a couple of experiences as well where I've sort of seen the trajectory about where we're going on the current timeline, and we are beings of frequency. So we do know that they do have the ability through this technology to be able to modify we do know that technology like voice-to-skull technology has been used in the Gulf War. So that technology can be projected through that technology and impact people's way of thinking and their frequency and how they're feeling, and not necessarily know why they're feeling a certain way, or feeling agitated, or feeling particularly tired or lethargic.
But if they can actually beam thoughts into somebody's mind, then perhaps they can also monitor the data, or let's just say the brain activity, in order to read minds, really.
Yeah, that's it. And then that leads to the concept of, projecting and pre-crime, etc. as well. But they'll be able to formulate a lot of that stuff, and the probability based on mind mapping people based on their metadata and their movements in relation to, what you text messages and the algorithms and the websites that are visited, and all that data being harvested, and the predictability of what your movements are going to be even before you've really thought about it as well, Lucas.
Who benefits from this? I mean, who's behind orchestrating this whole thing?
I got to have a conversation with Dean Henderson, who wrote the article about 5G, the Colour of Humanity, and that's really fascinating as well. Look, I'm just going to touch on as well. I spent about 9 years in Dubai in the Middle East, and the military-industrial complex has definitely got their claws in there. They when I'm talking about the military-industrial complex, I'm talking about companies like BAE, British Aerospace, Raytheon, Boeing, companies like that are big into the arms business and military-industrial complex. I know BAE, for example, they were big into selling these surveillance systems into the Middle Eastern countries, places like Tunisia and Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, etc. And BAE is also the company that manufactures a lot of this microwave technology as well. So for the active denial systems on the front of ships and vehicles and that sort of thing. So how far up the pyramid we go is remains to be seen.
So do you think it is actually a New World Order plan?
Yeah, I think it's the New World Order under the guise of technocracy. There's a book called Technocracy Rising by Patrick M. Wood, where he talks about the technocracy being the rising of the New World Economic Order under the agenda of technocracy. And if you look at it, even without the surveillance issues that are being in place, the amount of people that are developing technology addictions alone is just phenomenal. It's really quite scary. That's like, we joke about it sort of being the zombie apocalypse at the moment, but you're the weird guy that's not looking at your phone on the train or something if you're not doing that, So it's an interesting time. But yeah, I do believe that's under the guise of technocracy and convenience. So the rest of the people are either being completely distracted by design or just like full with trying to cope with what they're dealing with at the moment to actually see and be aware of what's going on at the moment. And it's a bit of it's a spiritual war that's going on at the moment. So
and do you think that's because more and more people are waking up to what is actually going on behind the scenes and what is taking place, that they're not told through the mainstream media and told by their, governmental officials? Yeah, I do. I think it's there's a lot that's not being said, and for example, I covered off in my presentation as well the fact that it's the integration with the technology. I think you touched on satellites before. The satellites are going up. I don't think that has anything to do with 5G at all. I think that's purely for a full-blown surveillance system. They're talking about shortwave radiation for 5G. I've got no idea how, from a technology point of view, how 5G could reach or be directed from satellites that are like 35,000 kilometers away in space. Maybe they're using technology we don't really know about and not being told that they're using.
Exactly. But I think it's more so for surveillance rather than it's definitely more so for surveillance rather than for direction of energy at this point in time.
A lot of people are saying that it is actually used for directed energy weapons.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been tracking that. I don't have a lot of knowledge around that area, around the direct energy weapons, but the way things are going at the moment, Lucas, like anything's possible.
Why is the mainstream media not covering the other side of the story, meaning that so many scientists all over the world actually have spoken publicly about the dangers, the health effects? They saw it with 3G and with 4G, and now we have 5G, and nobody knows actually what that is. They don't know the long-term effects. Why do you think that is not covered by the mainstream media?
We've been putting a lot of media releases out, and we haven't been able to get hardly any coverage at all. But and then you have some other groups that, like Extinction Rebellion, for example, that we strongly we have strong suspicion that they're actually controlled opposition and leading the UN into like the 2030 agenda.
What are they doing?
They're getting a lot of publicity. They're pulling publicity stunts in most of the cities across the world, bringing the younger generation of people through under the guise of climate change, and then have them being involved in their movement, and then they'll be steering them towards the smart city scenario as a solution to the problem. That's Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, right? So these people are very sophisticated, and it's amazing to sort of think that all these agendas around controlled opposition and that sort of thing would still be around in this day and age, but very much alive and very much operational at this point in time.
Strategic manipulation.
Exactly. Yeah, moving people into causes and agendas that are not actually meant to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned climate change. What are your thoughts on climate change and the current climate debate?
Yeah, I think there's a split in there as well. There's two facets to that conversation. One is temperature, and then the other is pollution. I think pollution is definitely an issue, and the people that are polluting, like the big corporations that are polluting, should be charged, and should be penalized for that.
But do you think that climate change is man-made and CO2 is a problem?
Well, it's interesting. We keep going through. I remember reading an article in going back in Time magazine in the 1970s that was referring to we're going through a cooling phase. I think the planets and the cycles we go through, even in our life or through the planets, we go through cycles of heat and cooling.
Natural climate change.
Natural climate change, yeah. But it's just my natural my natural sense of cynicism creeps in when that's actually going to become like another indirect form of taxation and revenue.
But in a manifesto or whatever it was, a paper written by, the Club of Rome that was formed in 1968, they actually spoke about a possible political agenda creating this climate change problem.
Yeah, I haven't read that personally, so I don't know whether I'll be able to comment on it. But, I know that some of those, particularly some of the environmentalist type groups and movements, they're very much in favor of like a one world economic order as a solution.
Mm-hmm. So they're using climate change for that as well, and also 5G?
5G in relation to creating solutions for smart cities, etc.
And also Internet of Things.
Yes, the IoT, the Internet of Things, and that's the connectivity of all the devices, the vehicles, the fridges, the televisions, etc. All those devices all reading and feeding off each other and pretty much being on all the time.
Smart meters are mandatory here in Denmark and many other places. What can we do to actually say no and have these smart meters removed from our homes?
I didn't know it was mandatory. That's very interesting.
It is.
Yeah. So what happens for you if you refuse? Do you have the right to refuse a smart meter, or it's like they just force their way in and install them?
They're trying to force their way in, but if people don't open their doors, then perhaps they can't get in. But some people have experienced that the electricity company is threatening them to turn off the electricity. So it remains to be seen what they actually will do. It's still something happening right at this very moment.
Yeah, that's interesting, Lucas.
What's the situation in Australia, in your part of the world?
Yeah, well, people are either refusing. They're refusing. They're following the process around the notice of liability letters and correspondence with those particularly governed bodies. And if they're looking for solutions and cloaking systems for those type of devices. And then ultimately people are making plans to transition out of those city environments and be able to be away. If they're in a block of apartments, they're just getting surrounded by smart meters and Wi-Fi signals, electromagnetic radiation. I know as I was an apartment block recently, and I looked up the Wi-Fi code, and there's probably about 30 different fields in that immediate area. And people will be able to deal with it for a while, but then they'll start developing things like chronic fatigue, and they'll start getting unwell, and it has an accumulative effect. And that's the thing as well. That's the main concern as well, Lucas, from talking with these scientists and technicians with this technology. They're saying that there is no antidote for there is no antidote for radiation.
But can we do anything to shield ourselves from all this electromagnetic radiation? What can we actually do?
Well, that's the other interesting thing as well, Lucas, and that's the fact that having the conversations with these people, with these experts, with these technicians, these scientists, these doctors, they're saying there's actually nowhere on Earth anymore that there is a 0 point.
Not even if you move into some remote forest or something?
Yeah, not even some remote forest. They said that there's nowhere left on planet Earth at the moment. There is a 0 point, that there is a control group of zero exposure to any field of radiation at the moment because of what we're being surrounded by at the moment.
So can we do anything to stop the rollout? Is there anything we can actually do?
There are some things that we can do, and that's what we're in the process of. We're in the discovery of that at the moment, individually and collectively, as a community, as states, as countries. Stop 5G Global, as most of the groups have got Stop 5G Group or 5G Free in most of the locations around Australia and internationally, Africa, Middle East. So people are doing different things. I think the first front is really the education and awareness. That's the first access, is being able to have that conversation with people and to be aware of it. People sort of call us and say, look, there's they just put a cell tower out the back of my property yesterday, but it's like, it's been there for a while. You just haven't noticed it before. So it's really the conversation for awareness, and then there's taking the action around notice of liability letters. There's potential there for class actions. There's taking action against individual towers on a tower by tower basis that we've been doing in Australia with different processes. It takes time, and people are forming committees, getting people together, gathering evidence, gathering data, and starting to take action. And under the law, I know it's different in different countries, Lucas, but we have the precautionary principle under law, and that's that the burden of proof is actually on the person that's committing the act to prove that it's safe, not the victim. Mm-hmm. So that's the interesting thing. The barrister Ray Broomhall that we've been working with Australia, that spoke at our event as well, he's actually taking action against the telecommunication companies under criminal law for assault.
What would you like to do in the future? What is your best advice for people when listening to this? And you're doing all of this thing with the Stop 5G Global and your health symposium also, and talking to people all over the world. So what would you like to see? What is your best advice?
Yeah, I think it's an awareness thing. It's about people being aware of radiation, and there'll be things that evolve at a point in time, the same as energy ratings on devices. So devices in the future will have ratings on their electromagnetic fields that give off. People need to minimize, and yes, you can buy EMF blocking material and clothing that's getting made, etc. But it's all about minimizing your exposure to electromagnetic fields and electromagnetic radiation. People shouldn't be holding phones against their head. They shouldn't be sleeping with their Wi-Fi on at night time. They should be doing as much of their devices need to be cabled as possible, cabled to node, just removing as much wireless signal as possible, avoiding things like smart meters where possible. Any smart technology is not necessarily smart for you, it's actually smart for them, because it's gathering data. And we sort of joke about it with things like Facebook, etc. If there's anything there that's free, you're the product.
Exactly.
Minimization, Lucas. So minimizing it as much as possible, and it's going to be a huge movement where people are even having conversations now that about like creating community that's free from EMF, etc.
And just in our remaining moments here, is there anything people can do spiritually to protect themselves in a way? And do you think that also matters because we are made up of frequencies and vibration, right?
Yeah, definitely. And this is the thing as well, because it's not that it's necessarily being done to us, even though that it's happening and it's occurring. It's also a bit of a reflection of our collective unconscious as well. So we really need to, our hope for humanity as a species is the transformation of the individual, and for as many people to wake up to collectively to the conversation now as possible about, like, this is the, like, we're not aware of it because it can't be seen. We've totally been aware of what's been taking us out energetically, and as far as our health and well-being and potential to cause all sorts of interference with the body. But I think, what we're up against here at the moment at this point in time is for us to be able to do whatever we can, to have whatever conversations we can, to gather as community, to talk about this. And the thing is, 5G's not necessarily the thing. 5G is the trigger. What we're really about at this point in time, and what it provides for us is access for the opportunity to have a conversation about the type of world that we want to create for ourselves, not the reality that's attempting to be imposed on us.
If people can contact you for more information or about the work that you do, how can they find you?
Yeah, they can find us through our website, which is stop5gglobal.org.
Very, very important topic and very interesting. And it's been wonderful talking to you, Paul SEILS. And we want to thank you very much for doing this interview with Age of Truth TV. And good luck to you and Stop 5G Global and if you do more conferences on the topic as well.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much to Paul SEILS, and thanks to all of you for watching Age of Truth TV. You can support us by clicking onto our website, ageoftruth.tv. And please subscribe to our channel, hit the bell for notifications, and like our videos. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.